manju shiri ye, nama su shiri ye, nama u dhamma shri so ha. O namo manju shiri ye, nama su shiri ye, nama u dhamma shri so ha.
我上节知道自己头脑了，讲究把大年节大年这个不也错了。我老别叫上前路吧，学上节知道自己头脑，我自己才叫才能做。大概这个错了，见着了别叫上前路吧，学上节知道自己头脑，他成就好多那个。大概这个错了，见着了别叫上前路吧。三些这些是这么着，他这个三界行道没得不往，印度给南大行了结不有一当过着的慢慢到了干的呀的呀。我也到他嘛，东华进来是觉得到汤就大个村的，马上去个人情况下的，妈些把几家们马些把了，汤就没这把人，定期就忙的嘛。대원 대저 랑도 고로 티비온 등에 바시 영원의 대가 끼지자 만들고 등재지 만드나 대지 피스 소바들 테나 점을 제바 되지 제바 다비샤 대다시니 발라말라 신지로도 소 또 샴바고야 상타니.
So first, all suffering mothers and all suffering sentient beings have been our mothers, and all suffering sentient beings have been our mothers for numberless times. They are as kind as my mother of this life. Even though all mother sentient beings want happiness and do not want suffering, but due to not knowing the object of abandonment and adoption, they create a karma that only bring forth the result of suffering. In our mind, sincerely cultivate loving kindness toward all kind mother sentient beings. Think, how nice if all kind mother sentient beings had happiness. And may all kind mother sentient beings have happiness. I will cause all kind mother sentient beings to have happiness. Lama, please bless me to be able to do so.
어디 이제 동아리나 생기다 탕지 고 성질만 되게 뭐 타다가 가나 점마로 다와 지지 다와 다비샤고 대다시니 발라말라 신지로도 또 인제 공한 성당시다.
Next, we cultivate compassion toward all suffering mother sentient beings. That how nice if all suffering mother sentient beings' three doors were free of all adversities. May all suffering mother sentient beings be free of all three doors, be free of all adversities. I will cause all suffering mother sentient beings' three doors to be free of all adversities. Lama, please bless me to be able to do so.
이제 좀 동아리나 이제 되다 탕지 고와다는 소고 동아리야 또 이게 슬라 봉도 상게 녀라라고 녀라라 보지 다디 내가서 양다와 좀 상지지 공부하는 게 니바면 더 니바를 슬라여서 양다와 좀 상지라 여비 대신 이제 탕지 때 상지지 공부하는 뭐지 찌는 게 더버 샤오 냥비 창조지 생각.
Next, we cultivate bodhicitta toward all suffering mother sentient beings. First, we ask ourselves, who should take the responsibility to free all suffering mother sentient beings from the sufferings of all samsara and of three lower realms? I should take the responsibility to free all suffering mother sentient beings from the sufferings of whole samsara and of three lower realms. But I do not have the ability to do so. Only those who have achieved the perfectly complete enlightenment have the ability to do so. Therefore, for the sake of all sentient beings, by all means, I want to become Buddha.
어디 이제 이제 tangi전 상지 공부도 봐. 겨우 냠을 맨비 생군도 봤더니 랑게닝가 다이 친구 용서도비 된디지 세다. 다 대인도 최단지랑 이제 모두가 동반이 랑게 생이 로지도 집에 단단히 chan지 생데 다니까 다이 대인도 도지 거부 생아비 넘버치 된디지 상당히다.
For the sake of all sentient beings, we cultivate all-encompassing yoga mind, that our aspiring conventional bodhicitta that thinks, for the sake of all sentient beings, I want to become Buddha. And this turns into a perfect, complete mundis. And our ultimate bodhicitta, that is our mind becoming in one taste with emptiness. That is all phenomena are lacking of inherent existence. And that turned into a white five-pronged vajra on top of the mundis.
이제서 더 풍부다랑 이지다데 강대가 모두 랑이 주게 동안이 사도서 동반이나 주지 상당하셨어.
Next, we meditate on emptiness, that I do not exist intrinsically one with the aggregates, nor intrinsically different from the aggregates. Thus, I do not exist intrinsically.
대지점 이제 tangi전의 상지지 공부하다고 대지에다 장조란지를 비트기는 ஞான의 책임도 지는데 생기는 편바두고 사도서 권을 지죠.
Set motivation. For the sake of all sentient beings, I want to become Buddha. For this purpose, I'm going to receive teaching on Lamrim and practice it accordingly in order to benefit sentient beings.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
당가서 상대 딜레를 같이 녀문에서도 만들었어요. 녀문에서 만들었어요. 당가서 녀문에서도 나와가 때문에 좀 여러와. 네 녀문에서한테라 나와가 때문에 딱까지 비디오 피서와. 다 드린 거라서나 드린 가서 된디 지이심바데. 다 된디 녀문에서 가서 마 지이심바데 시고로와. rimbat kandi yinse da nimba chida chi rimba se di ma shue rwa.
Yep. So last week we identified the 10 mental afflictions, and among these 10, there are 5 are views and there are 5 are non-views. So these we have already gone. We went through it last week. So today I'm going to talk about the stages by which the mental afflictions arise.
다 사지 nimba chida chi rimba ne gita da maribani suson de batana ta thapa do bala mi ba chungse pade te thapi nelu masa tela dunzu jillo chiwa na shin se ta te pele shangwa dunzu jillo chiwa na shin ta phumbo ge nelu de sawala dibi tindi maribi mi ba tele ta phumbo la da dan tuwa chen no res ruwa phumbo da dan tuwa chen no res den tuwa chen se de tindi tuwa chi bin jita tele te nyamo ba hin so chen no res ta de ro ta da.
Yep. So if the view of the transitory collection and ignorance are posited as distinct or as different, then the stages of how the mental afflictions arise must be understood in the following manner. For instance, once darkness has fallen on a coil rope, the mind will apprehend it as a snake if the state of the rope is not clear. Likewise, because the darkness of ignorance obscures the clear state of the aggregates, and then from it, then delusion regarding the aggregates as a self arises, and then from that, the other mental afflictions arise.
Papi Nilu the Haku, Martin, mi Bachose Podi, Nilu Telatine, the Taba Dudon Zindogorwa, Papa Dunzibi, Tawatanjita la Pesha, the Pumbo Nilu Masawa, Maribi Miba, Mipale Takanda, Nilu Masawa, Takanda Maribate, Roa, the Masai Te Wangi,
Member de Mariba Maribela.
O Mariba, O Mibadroa, Takanda Pumbi Nilu Stawala. The Maribi Mimbales, that Cosebo Manton at Roa, the Mariba de Roa, that Masebo Manton, the Pumbo, that to the Danzi the chain over the S or that Zimba the chain over the S. The dot remains in the Chudi, the Danzi day on it up and Kwan Koji saw the Danzi de Sunza, that day on the Yamushin Chada Monsola was last of the Yamu Kanga the chain over the S or Kotsa Kwan Koji Sawa Chadirua.
So regarding the view of the transitory collections and ignorance, whether they are being the same or as different, then according to different tenet systems, they assert differently. So however, I'm not going to elaborate here because we will get confused by the extensive explanations about it. So here, when we talk about the view of the transitory collections and ignorance are being different, then it involves darkness, and the state of the rope is not clear, and regarding the coil rope as Nick. So the darkness, so the ignorance is likened to the darkness, and the state of the aggregates is not clear, then it refers to is likened to the state of the coil rope, which is not clear. And regarding the coil rope as Nick, and that refers to apprehending the aggregates as a self. So apprehend the aggregates as a self. So that is regarding the coil rope as a snake. So from it, that is the self-grasping, and then from it, then other afflictions such as attachment, anger arises.
That didn't get on Mariba, Susan de Patanas and so said the Gilu touch it almost long general, but don't live with Roa. That is one of the best. She said, Yelma, Tanda, Samayabu, Samaroa. Long as long general, this was a Kanda, Jita Mariba, Susan de Roa.
Because a lungi generabaina?
Or long general, but the Kashita, Chedamo, Zuko, Jita Mariba, Susan de Roa. That long gender patending to the Bada Sense Ambassador and to say Shia Mamboyori. That is a jealous watch. China Chima Dunshi over there. What's what you are?
So any Casati lawsuit Zibate Chidamawagi to Tsuro.
What a Chidamo, the long gender patisuries.
Lungi Genderaba. Naso. Yeah. So those who regard the view of the transitory collections and ignorance are different. Are the Vaibhashika and those the followers of scriptures.
The Danish Chidon de Patanas, Danjita Mariba Chidon de Patana, Danjita Nimuji Savari ese. Roa. Danjita Nimusawa, Chidon de Takanda, the Oma Padi Chiraglo. The Oma Padi Chida Pigeon. Uma was a party children repeat Jason. That is so that chance of Shisashi Tamambushi, that was Janagi Chanimachi Yamato, Danda Perere, Tentama, Desala, Uma Banina Coronano Mambo Yore, that's Chedamoina, Nanola Mambo Yore, and though they pass about Sama Susu, Yanano, Desumano, Mambo Yore. That was it, Janagi, don't you patch Shianua. 다 단다 안지다 마리바 지돈데 바타나서 조온다고데 다 우마바다 빠니 추라기 로리비 젠다 단데 소기 로라 오다데마 지시에 단지다니 녀무지 자와레시 다데마시가 지루와
And if those two are posited as the same, so those who proceed these two view of the transitory collections and ignorance are the same, then those asserted by the Madhyamikas, so those who hold the view of a middle way, and also Chandrakirti also hold this view that view of the transitory collections and ignorance are the same, and those followers of reasoning, they also proceed these two. Is my connection okay? Should I say that my connection is not so good?
You are very clear, Ken.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so maybe some disturbance. Okay. So Madhyamika and Chandrakirti and those followers of reasoning, they are the proponents of this view that view of the transitory collections and ignorance are the same. So again, I'm not going to go in depth because even Madhyamika, then there are divisions and they assert differently, and even those Vaibhashikas, there are many different schools as well, or different divisions, and then they also assert differently as well. So in general, so Madhyamika, Chandrakirti, and followers of reasoning, they assert that these two are the same.
Ken, Melissa here, I think you are breaking.
I'm lagging. Oh, okay. Let me see.
But it's fine from my side. Sorry, Ken and Gishna, but my side. I think Ken, it's okay. So it might be individual internet connection, I believe. Any other people? How about y'all? Is it clear?
It's clear. It's clear for me as well.
Yeah. So I think
it's clear for me. Yeah,
okay.
It's good. Yeah.
카시에나 디세보 고기도 카시에나 디세보 고기면도 지지나 수수기에 자게 인기를
아네네 야야야.
that's
야야.
that's
다 디지로. 당나도 데레샤. 다 간다 지단이 녀무지 자와리 상가서 따왕아다 따밍아서 다 지심바디 쉬고르와. 다 같이 따왕아 따밍아 외송사로와. 다 담봉아서 데니 지도데 빠져다 지다서와다 간다 간디 중에 쓴 것이나 다 지도데가 간다 랑디지 나다 나요 카르라미네 다 나랑 신지 주반 짐비 안짐바 진디기 뇽무질라 워르와
랑칭이도 도바와
와랑 진지 랑 지지 다 랑지지 나다 나요 카르라미네 다 나랑 신지 주반 짐바치
랑규기 공다기실라 랑규기
와 나다 나요 카르라미네
나다 요와
다다
기와르베이라
나다 나요 다 나라미네스 라젠 다티스 거달 쳐쳐더라 엄미
라조
랑지지 나라미네 다 나랑 그 친지 두만 짐바 데리지 다 간전 지다 가서 예수야 지로와 단 지다스나 데리지에서 다 간다들에 나랑 그 친지 두만 짐게 디발라지 거달 쳐쳐더라 엄미
라조
랑지지 나트다 랑지지 나데 랑 친지 두만 짐게시
라조 Yeah, so to identify what is the view of the transitory collections, there is apprehensions or it is an apprehensions of self, or it is the apprehensions of self in one's mind stream that it exists inherently. That it exists, that it exists inherently. So that is view of the transitory collections. Apprehensions of a self in one's mind stream, as inherently existence. Apprehensions of a self in one's mind stream as inherently existent. So that is view of the transitory collection.
탄줄은 안지다 간다 안지다라 단지 이고래서 단지 다스트만 되게 단지 다 단지 송자 코 간다 녀무군지 싸와 코안 고지 싸와 다 싸와 있는 거야 진심들다 녀무지 싸와 다트만 집이 단지 지다 코나 다트만 집이 단지 당가서 단지 들은지다 수용고 말했을 때 단지로 타도 데려와 단지 런지다 수용고 말했다 인지다라 단지 인고를 해서고 다 간다 된다
지다이나 지다이나 디 간사기 당신의 인고로
다트만 집이 단지 인고를 해서고 다
들어봐 얘네들 강사기 당신이나 대 지다 인고 말와
같은 지다 수용고 말해서 다 엄마 단지 타도 느끼시고로
that's all. Yeah, so according to Prasangika Madhyamika, they assert the view of the transitory collections as the self-grasping of person. So this self-grasping of person is the root of all afflictions and is the root of samsara as well. So the view of the transitory collections is necessarily a self-grasping of person. However, self-grasping of person is not necessarily a view of the transitory collection.
지다기 진이라고도 니처럼 다 전바지 생이 열도 코들 봤다네 그 진이도마 정확히마 세보 마치 된 곳으로 와 네 정확히 계산을 할 때 전바지시대
개요말이 that's all. Yeah, so regarding the definitions of view of the transitory collections, then I will send to Ken, and then Ken will translate and then let you all know.
나가서 이제다 단지다 녀무지 자와래 세워대 다 당보가서 따와가 때문에 당보 지다는 게 송송아 제일은 받으려다 다 제일은 받으러와 다 당보 지다는 게 송고래 단 지다는 게 송고래 단 지다다 말이 바니까 간다 지든 되바디 왕듯이 시고 게 송고로 단 지다 게 송데 말이 방에 송사로 와 말이 방에 송사로 띵념 들어와 게 송사래 다 띵게 송데 다 지다데 빼 지다 되게 다도 들바 진바 대 왕기 단지 대 왕기 대 라다 예 소소 리스 제파시그레 진지다 대왕으로와 다트만 지바 대왕게 라다 예 리스 제파시 리스 제네 더 랑게 쇼라 배 하장게 랑게 쇼nga 소소게 다네 년자다 로보다 가사 칸디나 솔 하장 차바지바 차반데샤 대샤지 대 랑게 마가스 틀라페 대왕게 대 해당 제바 해당 군도 제바로와 어디저디 다 당보 지다 니 마리바치네 다 당보 지다 마리바치네 니바텔라 다 랑기 쇼라 배 하장게 네사츠라 차바치소아 차바치스네 데 데이베 히나 당와치 랑기 마가사 다츠라 바 당와치 다 가진로서 신로사소아 기다 가서 따와가 따밍하는 신로사다시 지다 마리바니 당봉에 순사니 봐 당봉에 순다 다다디 디젤라 다 단지 대왕게 랑기 배 랑다 신지배 리소치 바시네 또 랑기 쇼라 배 차바다 인쇼라 배 해당 당완죠
지수 마도 민도하기지라
신로사다 지다 마리바니 찌든 되어서
나려 지다가 다 아이디 말을 반니로
어디
that's all.
다 림바체랑 레고 나도 말 림바체랑 시고도 와
that's all. Yeah. So now we are under the topic of the stages by which the mental afflictions arise, right? So now these two are posited as the same. So to a view of the transitory collections and ignorance are posited as the same. So this view of the transitory collections is same as the ignorance. So if we have already identified what view of the transitory collections is, then we also identify the ignorance is already. So we have already identified what ignorance is. So this view of the transitory collections is the root of affliction, is the root of samsara. So because of this self-grasping, or because of this view of the transitory collections, then it differentiates between one and others. So as it says here, a distinction is made between self and others. So because of self-grasping, then a distinction is made between oneself and others. So once this distinction is made, then one attached to oneself. So that oneself also include one's lovers, beloved ones, one's friends, and the person that you like. So then your attachment arises towards them, and towards others. So others, then for example, enemies, etc. Then you generate angers towards them. So regarding the afflictions that we previously talked about, so we have already we already covered 4 of them. So one is view of the transitory collections, and the second one is ignorance. So these 2 are regarded the same. And then the third one is anger, and the 4th one is attachment.
근데 다 대지에서 달라미네 캠바야 제나서 다 띵아자들이 도와 단 지달을 띵내다 간다로와 단 지달을 맞띵내다 간다 내가 간가 제진에 돈이 띵띵 또서 자원 지달 두들와
지달을 띵내 데이터라 미요
단 지달을 띵내 대변아 시다 난기 배 토와다 마와슬 다 간다 제바시네 나제스와디 간다라나 띠데 다 소소페 통보 시비진사 현합에 다 통중하고 지로와 현 라나리 메바르솔페네 다 델라틴트 소소페 다페 통보 시비지다니 등아제 지고요와 와 라나리 마와 베 연된다 롱제다 가를 톨리나 다 드솔라 마와 띠네 데펜 달라 미니페 생캠바 소라 미니페 다 소소 시비지 렌두사 등아제 지고 등아제 지역이 진다고 단지다 지고로와 와다 대지스 아제 지고도와
And also depends on this view of the transitory collections. Distinctions is made between internal, external, oneself, others, and also higher and lower as well. So, and because of this distinction, because of these distinctions, then the pride arises. Pride arises is an inflated mind. So this pride arises in relation to those who are lower than us in terms of qualities, in terms of wealth, possessions, and etc. Then in relation to those whose qualities are lower than us, then this inflated mind arises, that is pride. So this view of the transitory collections serve as the conditions for pride to arise as well.
다 다테니라 따치는 게 다다 따와서다 아시 다디노라 가르티나 디젤라 나지디 디젤라로와 다 나자기 디젤라 테니라 따치는 게 다다 따와서 세딘도와 다 디노라 가르티오스나 다 나자 디기제스다 디티오도와 만선 타다 따와 존진이 타다 따와 존진이 되니시오로와 단 타다 디지 단 지타 딜라로와 다 간다 인지티 칸소에 다텔라 미네로와 단 지타기 송기 다데
고다타나에네 디 타다당 춘진이로 이제라
따와 촌진이
따와 춘진디로
오
타다당 타다당 따와 춘진이로
오 티니시오 다단다
라소
다 테니라 따치는 게 따빠따와다 제빠따와서 따빠따와다 제빠따와서 타달라 고군 타달라 와 지타기 송비 다 요라 지타기 송기 다 타니리오비 다데 다 따빠른진바 데디 다데 요로와 체반진바 디 데간다 타타세와 데르다 오 데다고 로와
라소 So then so then as it says, also conceit arises upon observing that self. So that regarding that is the pride, as I mentioned just now. So after this pride, then that very self is then held to be permanent or subject to annihilation and is viewed as the self and so forth. So this permanent or subject to annihilations, so refer to a view holding to an extreme. So this view holding at an extreme is the self that is apprehended by the view of the transitory collections as being permanent or as being nihilistic. So this is the view to an extremes, and also the view holding to a bad view to be best. So these two are what we are going to identify.
따와 총지들 자기 타다의 실상인바 타다들라 닌도와 지디스 다들라 따바따와지다 체바따와지 닌도와 타다들라 타다들라 따바따와 진다따와니 다다도 따와 소다스 소다들나 먼저 따와 총지들 되나로 레고스와 소다들나 따와 총지스와 따와 총지들 가르스나 따와 총지들 단 지다다 로다다 로와 타다도 따와 초등 생기들와
지다당 로다당
원지다다 로다 and Tata to so Tawa Cho Manibala Tawa Cho and Zingorwa. Tawa Cho Manibala Tawa Cho and Zingor. That is so the Debo.
And yeah, is view yeah, that very self is yeah, and is view as the self and so forth. So is view as the self and so forth, referring to the view holding the view holding a bad view to be best. So the view holding a bad view to be best is so those view of the transitory collections, those wrong views and those view holding to an extremes, they are not supreme. But this view holding those this view holding those views as supreme or to be best is the view holding a bad view to be best. So then next, then the bad activities connected with it are upheld as supremes, and these refer to the view holding ethics and ascetic practices to be best.
Lota de Diredo, Tanda Dodochina, then Lota Zo de Kanda Timba Sanji Jondi de Petili Vini Pacha de Chepa Tanchi Pambi, Zobi Sanji Compa Tonge, that did Timba de Yomari, Senator Lota de Wata, Lota Zoch, Lota Duji. Mazu Sanji saw that he did a new dini, the Maliba, Pambi, the Toja, you would say Kanga, Tonke. The Sanji Jongde, number here to attend this year, that the Yomare, Sene, the Lotarwa, that Dembala, Yomar's Lotatawa. That Demba Digis some Lendage Najatso, Lendage Najata, Dinchita, that control also about the so, Roa. This is someone, Yomare is a Tani, that the Lota, Dushit Zorwa. That the Lota lesson.
That's all. Then likewise, wrong views are generated that think the teacher who taught selflessness, the actions and effects he taught, the four truths, the three jewels, and so forth do not exist. So here is the wrong views is identified. So, and this wrong view thinks that the teacher do not exist. The teacher who has achieved the state of enlightenment and who show the path, who show as a sentient beings the path to the complete state of enlightenment as well. So this wrong view regards such teacher do not exist. So they regards the teacher who has abandoned all the obscurations, the afflictive obscurations and obscurations to omniscience, and the person who has achieved who have achieved all the objects of accomplishment, such teacher do not exist, and this is wrong view. So besides that, these wrong views also regards that the presentations of actions and results do not exist. They also regard the four truths the teacher taught also do not exist, and also regard the three jewels do not exist. So this is considered the worst bad views, the wrong views.
Yana Teta Yoda me, Ina me, no Tesson Jewett. That page is that Tesson Tama Leudua. That Lota tele Tesson, this Tawura. Lota le Tesson, Lota Penta, Tumbata, Lendage Naja Kunto Sama Yomari, Senate, Pismepatan. That Tesson said what the bill is Tower Takanda. Lota le this tower. That Kunto Taki the Yomar Malabachita Yoda Mayam with the Tesson Chirua. That is a Tesson Yehuda.
Or alternatively, the doubt is generated that things do they exist or not? Are they a certain way or are they not? So then last one is doubt. So compared to wrong views that we had just talked about, then that teacher karma and in results, the four truths and three jewels do not exist. So comparatively, doubt is slightly better because doubt do not one-sidedly regards all these do not exist.
That is Roa. That day Jalama, and that day Rimbagi the Jedan Digi, Takanda Jangalama Losa Jerimbuti, Tama, Jatin, the Nandi, Petri Taba, Padin Chiraki, Nandi Grunga Tangua. That is Jati Tanda, Kanda, Masu Danzi, the Yoshinjela, Yamushi, Angalama Rimbagi, the chance of Chigri is a Todo that they don't know. They don't jet Nandi. Dayo Nani, him to hear, Dagin challenge in the dance, that on Yondele, never touching you on Jurasina, that as you condo. Dot Chumbanzi dancing guitar, the Yobaina, the Yosna, the Randa Jena, the Rizicine, the Rangishula, Chapa the Yenji, Damachine, the Damachine, the Pet Rimbagino, and then also Town of Time to Rimbagi to skin with the Esigua. That the chain where the Manzo de Jatin to Tangur, and that Jerimbuchi, but the Chudak in the song to us, Roa, that Chidanga, Kanda, Dole to Sunya, the Ino, but the Chuchapa, the cities, Lunde Johnny.
So the stages by which the mental afflictions arises. So we have just identified the stages the mental afflictions arise by which the mental afflictions arise in dependence on the view of the transitory collections, or that the self-grasping, apprehending as having a self, as a self. So these, depending on this, then mental afflictions gradually arise. So then, so this is what we have just identified. So then, the distinction is made between oneself and others. Then to oneself, then attachment arises. Then to others, anger arises. Then, one by one, then we identified the 5, the 10 mental afflictions. 5 are non-views and 5 are views. So that we talked about last week. So we have identified the gradual. The gradual stages of these mental afflictions, gradual stages of rising. They are gradual stages of rising. Yeah, we identified these 10 mental afflictions arise in stages. Sorry.
Yeah. That they just don't answer this somebody Yumi so there, such as somebody. That answers that is in Badman Sabajita, somebody Nyumu Nimi, that answer Tanda de Sokanda, that Tawanga, Tamina Tambo Neso, they just teach that is in Badi show. That in Badi Chesajilla, what that Nyumu did Jula Yoba in a time, Nimi did the dish your essay. The so Yovalata, Kanda Gense Yomare, Susope, that the so Jilla Yunsadi, that Susoge, Leka Kandi in a tab Mandibada, a Madewa, the Machiba Chanja Yamato, that Shinda Dichin Yomare Sokanda. That Dichi may be considered. Then the new moons that I should pay a push to a tambo Nesua, Tambo, the South Tower, Tamang Neso. Then yes, Chigin, but can be Chigunus, the Rimbat my shoe. That in Bachizadi, Dejala, what that is Jilla Chigin, but Jula Yobaina, what that name the rich Chigras, Roa, name the rich Chigre, so leader say Kangala, Machi Madik, the rich Yungure, that name the shower.
And then Lama Tsongkhapa quoted Chandrakirti, a commentary on Compendium of Valid Cognition, says, so when there is a self, there is awareness of other. Dividing between them brings grasping and anger. Every fault comes into being closely connected with these two. So this is a summary of what we have talked about. So Lama Tsongkhapa quoted Chandrakirti's commentary on Compendiums of Valid Cognition to support this point. So first, we have already identified the 10 afflictions, and 5 are views and 5 are non-views. So, and then we identify the stages by which the mental afflictions. Then next, we are going to talk about the faults of the mental afflictions. If mental afflictions presence in our mind, then it will harm us. So it will harm our body and harm our mind as well. It causes sufferings. It causes mental unhappiness as well. So if mental afflictions present in our mind, we do not have any opportunity to experience happiness.
Actually, my name is no teaching my Jawa Shambango book, and no teaching my Lunde Transong Ruan Dodin Jele, that Yamunachi, Dan Jongure, Saint Jongure, Sitin Jongure, Serua, the Nibe, Yamudi, the Jula Leodi, that never the teaching Gure, that de my sugar, Rua, no teaching Lund Madan, that Jawa Shambango book.
Yeah, and then my protector Maitreya's ornament for the Mahayana Sutra is quoted, and it says the mental affliction. It talks about the harms mental afflictions bring. So the first sign, it says the mental afflictions destroy you, and it destroys sentient beings as well, and it destroys your ethics. So it talks about the harms, the harms mental afflictions bring. So then the first sentence, the mental afflictions destroy you. So what it means is if mental afflictions present in our mind, then they induces sufferings not only in this life, they also induces the sufferings in future lives as well. So this is what it means by the mental afflictions destroy you. So it it brings happiness in this life, and it brings sufferings in this life, and it also brings sufferings in future lives as well.
Danile pa himbi, da sencheche lida so, lisola pe nebachine, da lisola nebachine, de kanda lisola nebachine, de getza kangan jondo kore, esirwa, getza kangan jondo kore, senchen jonso da danile himbi yen sencheke lila nebacha, so chebala so, tendiki, de getza kangan jondo kore, deji kangan jondo kore, esirwa.
소소기 계좌당 대기 대종기로.
뭐 선생고 수도 계좌다 senche hingo, de pe getza deji sul nechindo korwa.
Yeah, so the mental afflictions destroy you. You can also understand as the mental afflictions destroy your this life and future life's happiness. And not only it destroy you, it also destroys sentient beings as well. So sentient beings other than oneself. So it also destroys other sentient beings. So what it means is because of one's mental afflictions, then we harm others. So we harm others, we harms others' body, and then we take others' lives. And because of this, then one's roots of virtue is destroyed, and one's happiness is destroyed.
다 간다 트린 좋은데 와다 다 진지게 소라 내지바다 소제바다 랑게 참마 들리 소다 이solpe 고순지 샤와만 팀바 땅자 치마네 데랑 그 트리 피스 소바 야부 지어바나 데 트린도 비다보 메바 소자고로와 트린 소와랑 맞소페 뽕이 셈바지로와 맞아 뽕이 셈바지 트린지 뭐세 네 난지 쉬고요와 오 당아서 데베 트린 좋은데 와다 데 신지 랑게 신지 간디나 류라 메바치 소치 배 샤워문 팀바 저방에 받든지 제바이나 그 소속에 스팀배 비타고 여바데 메바선을 그래다 된종을 그래 세고 스팀종 세와데.
So not only it destroy you, it also destroys sentient beings, and it destroy your ethics as well. So because of afflictions, it harms oneself, one's body, and one's mind as well, and mental happiness, etc. They also harm others by bringing harm to others' body and take others' life as well. So because of these mental afflictions, we engage our three doors engaging in misdeeds. Our three doors engaging in misdeeds, and it destroy one's ethics. So what does ethics means? So what does ethic means? Ethic is a mind of abandonment, a mind of abandonment. So if we were to harm others' body, harm others' lives, then one's ethics will be destroyed.
다 게자다 미기 소소그 배 샤와 상보 야보지나 드소마 냥도와 다 신기 소소라드나 로바 야보 지야지나 로바드 마지바마 냥도와 로와 다 신기 배 하가슈지 하다 주중 소마 간디지나 참하게 소소라 배 로바 지야도마 냥도와 로와 다 하라마 간디지나 다 간다 소소라 배다 간다 다스테 배나 간다 로바 지구나 다 로바 마지바다 다 간다 메라톤사 다 간디 미다 마 간디나 소소라 메라톤사 다 샤와님 바틀리 레사네 다 순베지나 메라톤사 지마도 다 간다 레지 데사기 자와니 이거 말아 다 레지 서는 가서 샤와 잠보지나 들라 레지 데스 요로와 레지 샤가티 원다고 다 하라마 가슈리 하이레 간디나 사마기 배 로바 지야레 냥바다 메라톤사 든디 차노 그래 다 든디 차스나 더 소소게 게자 세는 강가마 냥니 대소소 다 간다 등이기 대 양라마 홍도 그래 세고로와 된다디 등에 나로마 홍도 그래 세고다 로와
So, and this verse talks about the faults of the mental afflictions. If mental afflictions are present in us, then one's fruits of virtue will decline, one's merit will decline as well, and one's good deeds will decline as well. Like for example, if you without the mental afflictions, then you offer help or offer service to others, right? And because of the presence of mental afflictions, then you do not offer your help or assistance to others anymore. So one's good deeds also decline. So besides that, those the deities on the gods on the white side and also Dharma protectors, etc., then no longer will offer their protections to the person whose mental afflictions present, or they do bad deeds, continuously commit bad misdeeds to others, and oneself become an object to be blamed. So as others like the gods, the deities, Lama, and whoever will also blame such a person. So because of these mental afflictions, then one falls into the abyss of suffering.
사바 토마도바 다 레가 간디지나 소소 등이 장자치니 농가 어다 되는 용어에서 님무 마세와 다 님이서 들이 열세고와 다 님무도 제차나
타마데 공다 님이데
오 님이데 다 간다 소소그 연데 nga 토 심바 간가자 바 냥도와 다 사바 토마도바지 네 소소게 등에 샤와 레가 간디 제바이나 소소 등에 나만 맞히려야지 배 디지 토리 바 소소그 샤와 두야출 menjo지 로와 데치다 데빙원의 샤워 두야 menjo 내가 간디진 앞에 동에 짱짱 나오는 거야지 근데 토니 샤워 간다 소소그 뒤세 존에 근데 진구를 해서 다 간다 너무도 베니미서 근데 두자 열어서 다 너무들라
Yeah, so these mental afflictions is very bad. So besides the faults that we have mentioned just now, and mental afflictions also cause us to born in an unfree state, a state without freedoms, and also cause our previously achieved good qualities to decline as well, and those qualities that we not yet achieve, and then it will cause us not being able to achieve those good qualities. And besides that, we also cause whatever works that we engage in, it will only bring the result of sufferings only, and we will exhaust our lifespan in experiencing suffering.
legatia gure, that so Rawan Yo Mares, that Dodo Delta, Rawan Tigma Rawameba, Saint, that Yamu want to do a Yamu want to do a Yamu the lega to judge mother Yawachi Sawan in the Yomar. Noah.
So, and Lama Tsongkhapa continued to quote, entering the Bodhisattva way, Bodhisattva. So it says, this first verse, so enemies such hatred and craving. So the meaning of this first verse of entering the Bodhisattva ways, the essential meaning of it is, if afflictions arise in one's mind stream, it will not give us any freedom. So, and instead, it will enslave us. So, as it says that they have reduced me to servitude. So, if afflictions arise in one's mind stream, it will enslave us. It will not give us any freedom. So, if we fall under the control of afflictions, what we will do is negativities.
That is so the conditions that he don't say about that is new to Laura. Then there's a Kunanga Mari Banjita to Sama and to Luira. That is our the name Kanga Dibita, she don't say about the Kandina. That is also some of the Kanda Susu Dara. That is so good just was a Inji Meji, a Kamba Yobachi, the Lapa Yobachi, Lapa no Kanda, Lado Chidan Dudan, Sir, Mandala Soba, couldn't get in Nichi Maria. The teaching of the Jidibita, Yumanashi, the dear Maris, Lad and Sunshine, the Jidibita Mare, the dear Mare, Inako, Tendi, Dati, Sumudi, Koniba Chimbo, Top Chimbo, Mansu Jesu, Mansu Sugona, and Top Chimbo, the Shoe Chimbo, the Tendig number 10, you get the Dichi Mare, number 10 K Maris, Manso Sugo number 10 get the Nipa Chimbo, Top Chimbo, Manso Naji, the Shoe Chimbo, the Dichi and Jidibita. But Tindi came Maris, Kanda, Tanda Yamuti, Suso Yopo, Nashi Koran Carlona, Dick Jason Doga, Suso Yopo train, Yopo trains the Jindag Lega Karchis and Kodik Yaburam. They imagine a Korama Piaram, they Koran, they are Kenera, Lega Yomarwa, or Jindag Carles and Dilebua. They Malena ko the Lega Marako. Oh, this is that dinner is over the yes, that's all the Ramiba, and that do the Chimba, that Ramiba, and this is all over the yes.
Yeah, so the enemies here refers to the afflictions that we have talked about. So, for example, anger, pride, etc., attachment, etc. So these enemies, these the afflictions that we have talked about, these enemy it doesn't have to be. So it doesn't have to be look like an ordinary enemies that the usual enemies that we talk about. It's not necessary that they must have legs, they have hands, and in their hands hold a knife, a poison, weapons, or a pistol. So it's not necessary they have to be look like that. It's not necessary that they have hands, limbs, and etc. holding weapons, and it's not necessary that they will appear in such a way that they are very strong. So if we look at an enemy, if the enemy is very strong, then usually they have big bodies, muscular, etc. Right? So these afflictions, not necessarily do not appear in that way. So they do not appear in that way, showing muscular appearance, showing powerful appearance. So, but these enemies is so powerful that they're able to enslave us. When it presents in our mind, when it arises in our mind, then we have no choice but to follow the order.
Dog is saying a nigger, Nimisapa, maybe Nesi Chindua, or the City Shologa, Nibadra. That Shologa Nibade, Kanda, Nimi Zeba, maybe Nesa Dipata, Shologa Chindua. That the Shologa Chidi Kanda, that you Kundo Soso, Spit take a pair, Soso, Yoponashi, Sena Omega Sangidici. That is Zotsai, that is Sosola, don't know part of me, but you think it. That dunga part sena rama me so that that so dunga nyage dunga so chugri dunga pami lama part me nywa tindiji tigri es ta dodo na do tambo dunga pami lama jowa chigri dunga part me nywa chigri es ta di
Yeah. So the first verse talks about how that we being enslaved by these enemies' afflictions, and we do not have any mental freedoms. And after it enslaves us, then it follows by the verse. So while abiding in our mind, they happily inflict harm on us, on me, the patience that doesn't get angry at them is unsuitable blameworthiness patience. So after they enslave us, then it causes us to experience immeasurable suffering.
Tendi gaso chia yo ma resiwo ko da yimba ngue sungure ro ko da yimba ngue sungure ko la gawa dango gango yiran chia yo ma resiwo da ngaso be hedang la so ba su su jila lewo de ko la pa dra sungure ko la inji mi dra sungure ko la kanda su ko la dra mazuma na su ma nyawa la tendo la ma tinki ko sunza da ko tendi tinki jila ko la gaso chi ma gawa da jesi na jina de kanda su ma ma tindu ro 오다들 가고마로와 대파다 송고래 대라 군도 제고래 해서 다들 군도 제기서 양 나지 군도데 시고야 말다 나지 군도 나 시고야 말 대라페 파 카티잖아 다 송고래 대라파 군도 제고래 해서 대라 군도 제고래 해서 대라파 카티 님보 대야 시고다 대라 님보 대야 와 대라파 님보 대야래 시고래 대라 쇠바 공지어 말해서 나다 대라 쇠바 공지어 말 대라 쇠바 공야 마시와데 다 나지 가서 쇠바 끼자 근데 제바 시시고다로와 chedanto leode kolleji gazelele kola zeba kundo de shuchembo gazele china kola zeba gon tandu kundo shuchembo gazen dona rochina de kogi kundo telepe drama tawaji de tela roba chelo kanda kola ba roba chelo kola roba chisna ko shuchel chel ndogoro menalo medma churchur ndogna medma segna dinalo sanu shebaina med shuchel ndogoro kola roba chel medla o ta medma chursogona mena chushe urwago 오 출신에 콜 다타는 바 출신에 고 매드마 세브로와 오 등기지 대나시 오 간다 해당로서 버서 레오디 콜라페 강고 이나 지야요 말에 콜라 코 수술라 녀바칭이 콜라페 인지미지 다타 그래서 델라 제파치나 맞서 제파치에서 노노 해서 세바 고야요 말에서 델라 다타 그래 델라 다타니 코마 메바스요 택시죠 그래서 제마치 그래서
Yeah. So, So if afflictions such as anger, attachment, pride, and presence in our mind, then we shouldn't feel happy about it, and we shouldn't happily accept them. So instead, we must regard them as enemy. So this is what we must do. So we must regard them as enemy, and we must regard them as enemy because they will lead us to the rebirth in lower realms such as hell, and they will lead us in the rebirth as an animal beings as well. So these afflictions is the one that bring us there. So we must regard them as enemy. So and we shouldn't. And these afflictions is something that we must get angry at them. We must get angry at them. It's something that we must feel angry about. So, and here angry is not the usual angry that we are talking about. So usually when we talk about anger, then it's something we should avoid, right? So however, here the anger that we talk about is when we say we must get angry at them, means that we must put effort in applying antidotes to them. So we must get angry at them means that we must put effort in applying antidotes to them. And also we shouldn't be patient with them as well. So when afflictions arise in us, then we shouldn't be patient with it. And again, here is not the usual patience that we talk about. So if we have patience towards afflictions, then anger will grow stronger and stronger. Because we just let it be. We be patient with them, then that means we just let it be, not doing anything. So we shouldn't be patient with afflictions as well. And if we let it be, then these patients will assist the arising of afflictions, and it will become stronger and stronger. So it's just like these patients in these occasions, in this context, will be like putting oil into the fire instead of putting water to put off the fire. 주로가 니바이나 디 핫 어수마데라 나소
다 디기 간다 데다 다 간다 된다 데레 하다 함이 판제베 쇼지도베 소소라 다 랑고요나 다 랑자 다 니오무베 왕도 마지나 예다 그자 간다 메나 티신주 두고 말이에세 다 간다 고소 하다 빼샤는 시오로 빼샤는로와 하다 함이 간가베나 쇼지도 소소라 베 다라나 된 소소 니오무 왕도 마도 와이나 대다 간다 냐와기 매너 치투고 말해서 소소 냐와를 말 치투고 말 고소 참아베 소소라 달란자위나 대 간다 로아 고소기 소소베 녀무와도 마도와이나 대 고소기 소소 미게 냐와를 말 치투고 말해서 원 치투고 말해서 담보디 쇼로가 담보디 되래 매너 치진 주문이 냐와가 간다 로아 냐미기 매너나 간다 치투고 말해 고소 참아 소소를 빼다 대다 맨다 누라서 봐 간디지 코 레바이나 소소기 빼 델라파 로아 녀무와 생활도 만들어 빼 공정왕도 만들어 아당왕도 만들어 소소기 빼 장바다 니지라서 봐 든디 짱자라 상노탄에 대바이나 고소 가재물 가재 레바이나 내게 냐이 매너 치투고 말해서 거다 된다 되래 쇼로가 담보디.
So the next verse is an example that even if the gods and demigods were all to rise as enemies against me, they could not lead or put me into the fires of the Avicii hell. So this is an example. So if all the gods and demigods they come with weapons and pistol in their hand or guns in their hand, then even though they regard me as an enemy, all of them, all the gods and demigods, they regard me as an enemy. And if my mind do not fall under the control of afflictions, the attachment do not arise in me, the anger do not arise in me, then they are unable to lead me to the fire of the Avicii hell.
다 담보에 되지로와 다 효로가 되지를 시바들어와 다 니무 또치 단데네서 다 대다 끼지질랑 도로세 진도와 다 디쇼로가 지들어와 와다 디기 된다 데르다 다베 소소게 타당게 니무 드라 또 첨보도 다베 다 하장베 니빠 또 첨보 베 대다 대나시 코단 팀바지 제바이나 내게 된디 또 첨보 되게 베 냐와라마 러라비나 베나 타와 지자 물리바 던지게 소통게 니바 용기지 레스 니무데로와 다단 니무 던지지 레스 다 던디 대원도 숨바이나 다 간다 냐와라 던지지마 다 냐이 메나로 빼 친돈다 라비나 타와 탈라다 리무니카 리무니 바던지 송케지 대원도 만도와 다 던디기 니무 또 첨보도 빼 끼지장 대원도 만도와 파 도바라 쩨바체부리 해서와 대바 뻥바라 쩨바치 메신체부리 해서와 오 대마다 소소 파파야라 대마타파 카투바 빵토나 빵 대다 카투 빵 마투나 대라파 수속에 야 빵 통하게 빼 말람 제바다 수속에 빼 로아 세티니 빼 라다 개 간데지나 참하게 때빵 투야 쇼상 수속바 말람 제는 베세 제바 카투 빵토나 빵 빵바지 대다 카투 카테자 마투바이노 간다 수속 말람 제쓰지 간다 뽕투와 쇼상 들리지 제구야 개첨모레스고.
Then the next verse says, the mental afflictions, these powerful foes, throw me into it in one instant, where nothing met with, not even Mount Meru is left behind, not even ashes. So these powerful enemies, the afflictions such as anger and attachment. So if we were to follow them, so do as what they say, then they will lead us to the fire of unrelenting hell, or Avicii hell. So where even the Mount Meru will be burned into ashes or burned into nothing. So we have we have to make sure that we do not fall under the control of afflictions even for an instant. So what it means is we have to abandon them. So we have to abandon afflictions. If we are able to abandon afflictions, then we must do it. We must put effort in abandoning it. And if we are unable to abandon those afflictions, then we must, and it's very important to do so, we must make prayers, make supplication prayers. So from the depths of your heart, that myself and may I and all other sentient beings being able to abandon the afflictions, are able to abandon the afflictions. It's very important to make such supplication prayers from the depths of your heart if you are unable to abandon afflictions. So next verse that I'm talking about is compared to my foes, the mental afflictions protracted with neither beginning nor end. So this verse talks about if the ordinary enemies. So even if ordinary beings harm us, then, like for example, destroy our wealth, take away our possessions, even take our lives, the harms these ordinary enemies could bring is only limited to these lives only. So it can only harm us in these lives, but it cannot harm us in future lives. However, these enemies that we are identifying here is these afflictions. Not only if we do not put anything to stop it, if we do not apply antidotes to afflictions, then these afflictions will not only harm us in this life, it will harm us in hundreds of lives in the coming hundreds, the future hundreds of lives. So it has such ability to cause us to experience sufferings not only in these lives, in hundreds future lives as well.
Chamber Magawa so good data bojina, Beshida Junior Bokaki, Chutse Kaki, the Dolomari, Kaki Soso Magawa, Chutse Kaki, the Kaki, Nimakaki, Kaki, Dawakaki, Kaki, low Kaki, the Tindishpe, Mato, Be Joape, Kanzana, Sishima, Tendalmako, Nazope, Suneba Listola, Nepa, Tendichiaki, Umaroko, Rua, or De Mayon Sunza, Tangazo, Nyamu, the Drate, but Drat Dushit, yes, or Drat Dushit, Rua.
Yeah. So so since these afflictions will harm us not only in this life, in many future lives as well, so we must put effort in abandoning afflictions, and our effort to abandon afflictions must be continuous, like the stream of the river or stream of water. So continuously put effort in abandoning them. And compared to ordinary enemies, the persons that we don't like, so sometimes because of a very small matter, then we don't like a person, regard them as enemy. So this anger we regard them as enemy maybe for a few hours or even for a few days or even for a few months or years. So however, we will not get angry at them or regard them as enemy for whole lives or and even in future lives as well. It doesn't have such those enemies are not able to harm us whole lives or in future lives. So ordinary enemies do not have such powers, but afflictions, the enemy here, are able to do so.
연다데 간다 녀무지 도샤 마롱아세 ngaso 녀무라 팀보치야마 로바치야 말에 도보디야요 말에 사들이 간다 녀무라 도보디야요 말에 다 녀무라 도보디나 데 간다 도보 수수 종네 도보지 마서 도보네 자고요 말 다 녀무라 도보 서바이나 다 소소라 간다 등에 땡게 도보지 수수 릉게지 마도 수소를 야부 손에 말에서 그때 도보 데 도보 야부 많이 방요시 같이 그러와 녀무라 도보 Yeah,
so, and last verse from Bodhisattva. So while everyone helps you and makes you happy when you act harmoniously and with reverence, if you attend to mental afflictions that inflict suffering and harm in return. So here, basically, it talks about we shouldn't be friend with mental afflictions. So we shouldn't be friend with afflictions, and we shouldn't follow their order, and we shouldn't help them as well. So they are not our real friend. They are not our real friend, and this is something that we have to understand. So what they will do is just to deceive us.
I think it another Kanda, Njitin Dragon, Njitin Dragina, Dulupe, Matsope, Kazeda, Dulota, Darobajine, the Caritolina Longji, Garden Cola Parobaya, which Evaina, the Kogitsu, Dasun Maripe, Simbadma, Koralama, Tizma, Susuma Dragina, Maher Dogrua, Sakati Dachibaina, Susul Sakati Mantibazavina, Susul Patella Pai, Tatina, Colaparo Bateba, Koran Timba, Koran Shower Timba to the park, can't you share Yena? The Kansajila Kosu Topo Yas Channel, yes, or Yashi Channel. This was the last Ropatia Channel, yes, Tassigus, competition.
So ordinary enemies, if we help them in terms of giving food, or even if they need clothes, then we give clothes, and if they need necessities, then we provide necessities to them. Then even though they might regard us as enemy at first, however, if we try our best to help them, then they will slowly regard us as friends. So they will no longer regard us as enemy, and then slowly they will become a good friend of us. So so it is possible that even the ordinary beings, so even the worst enemies in these lives could become the best friend in this life.
Tak robachi de metsu yabu cheura shula kanda yabu chesigurwa la nyomu ge datela pe tobo soya marese dela tobo nyomu datela tobo sobaina tobo soda la kandisina nyomu kunro da shuchembo dile baina kunro degi tobo garsina kola pa kunro degi tobo koraya to cherendoya kola pa kunro chebo ko tobo korang timbarwa so kunro shuchembo jeudela dela pa kunro jesina kunro degi tobo charo kunro degi tobo charo kunro de la nipatrine kola kanda nipatrine koto chenpo sojabar rwa koto chenpo chana karche gre de randa hinika ge kunro nikadiya membane nipa to chenpo soni de kandijina chamala neba chigana chi tuyage nipa lebor rwa o ta nyamu la tobo so yo masa nyamu tige pe kunro da bujilesna kunro de nashi pe degi jeslansa telandone kunro de shuchere sobaina kunro de timba chebar kunro de timba koda tobo charda 다 코다 조보 차나 데 간사질라 니가 빼 셈바 라와메 빠빼 멤버를 그 차는 거 다니가 그러와 어떻게 차는 거. 다 대단 팀바치야요 말이스. 너무 공조이나 대단 팀바치야 말. 너샤이나 대단 팀바. 다 나제이나 대단 팀바치야요 말이스 간다. 대단 팀바 싸워리네 지야 말. 코란다 팀바치스나 코란다 조보 차는 거. 코란다 조보 차는 거. 다 코란다 조보 소야 메르다 간다. 맞은 지티비 간사 간디지나 조보 소그래. 조보 소그래 야부 체그래 마도 덴디 뇽을라 조보 싸워니 소야 마스. 다 가서 조보 강가도 야부래 뭐도 조보 강가도 야부 말이 가서 조보 야다 두어 신고로 조보 야부 소고도 간디 소고 뜻신 받지 그래서 그와.
Yeah, so ordinary beings is something that we should offer our help to them, and then we should reconcile with them. So, however, when we talk about friends, then we also have to identify the good friend, and then we also have to know that they are bad friends as well. So these bad friends is the afflictions. So if we befriend with afflictions, and if we offer our service to afflictions, and if we act in accordance with afflictions, then what it means is we befriend with them already. So we make afflictions our friends, and after we make afflictions our friends, such as anger, attachment, and etc., then it will give fuel to those afflictions. For example, anger, then anger will become stronger and stronger. So when afflictions arise in us and become stronger, then our mind will be lacking of, our mind will not so it will set our mind in fire. So not only our mind in fire, it will set others in fire as well. So it brings sufferings not only to ourselves, and then it brings sufferings to others.
다 간다 머리 이나다 끼리 만다와 머리 만다와 간디 줘봐이나 참말라 배 로보다 배 소소기 파마찌기 빈자 나시 덴디따 마던 로와 신제 단지 상사 안수 맞다 그래서 요로와 맞다 그래서 요로와 맞 나시 딱 그래서 뒤에 딱 그래 다뒤 러시 야 다딱 그래서 다다서 수임에 다 송그래서 디서 제마 셰마시 바이나 대야 나서 빼서 그러다와 하고 같이 그래 야 난치노로 다 송고도 데라 다딱 군두세 라사데 수레에세 간다 미기 두알레 바이나 다다사 데드라 송사데라 수레스나 다데 캬당 콘동하자 디솔라 다딱 그래서 라고요레스 디솔라 다타디 간디서 딱 그래서 미스 스케쳐 바이나 다 캬당 다딱 거나 캬당 코나다 간다 만팀바지 켜 그래서 일단 코로나 만티바지 제거래서 코로나 만티바 간디지 제거래서나 해당 휴청보 일에서나 대다 만티바 장바지 공지다 장바지 공지다 코다 내가 따다 놓으러 코다 만티바 차로 코다 만티바 차로디 코다 바다다오디 코 카테 짜투고 코다데 마 ngonya 두고래 코마 메바스 두고래 로아 오 근데 나도 나서 제바 시고다
Yeah, so sometimes when you read treatises, then you will see words like, or you have to regard some as enemies. Then you should regard some as enemy. So we also have to, also when we read text, then we also have to understand what enemies imply, what enemy is talking about. So here, when we talk about the enemies, is the afflictions. So this is something that we must understand. The enemy is afflictions, not ordinary beings. Then we make we make enemies with others. This is not what the verses actually means. So when regard afflictions, we should regard something as enemy. So what does it mean by regard as enemy? So who should we regard as enemy? So they are afflictions. So the afflictions are the enemies. So it's something that we have to properly understand. And then what does it mean? After regard as enemies, then we have to oppose them. So we shouldn't act in accordance with them. So what does it mean again? So we have to oppose them by generating the antidotes to the afflictions. For example, anger, then we generate loving kindness. Then it opposes anger. So this is what we means by opposing the enemy.
Rwa nyamu de pon ala tambo nyamu de ngesum ba chukore nyamu de kandi me ngesum gore rwa nyamu de ngesum ba mate nyamu de pon ge bi jense karsna nyamu de nyemi da hako ba che da nyamu de ma ba na ko ge nyemi du ja de ji ta shi sarwa wo de ji ha ko nyamu de ngesum de ge nyemi de shi wo de ji chomba ina de la kanda ngesum de ko la nyambo de kandi ji ten gu ndu ko la pakaya kandi ko mayu ga tashi gar che gu ndu zi shenba che gore esrwa zi shenba de ke chembora nga su kandi ina rwa nga su jite bi shawa lega kandi ji legu na su lega shenba che gu rwa nga su pe lodan do ba ina lodan pe su su lonse loga yora su su bi shawa lega kar je gina o su su ge pe lonse pe lega karina pe los su su ge ta kar legu na di lonse di shenba che gu rwa o de na shi ta chipa chi jaw le kanda rwa o nemu bi chen ta wala nemu de shen gu re ese controla nemi tane pa chen suba de la pa kabala da control ge nemi da control de la nembo kandi tengo de shen ba che da ndecha ina ndecha de ngo she ba che ne ndecha de je dang kandi chi che gu do da ndecha de je wu de la pa nemi nembo kandi tengo do ndecha de je sna ko ge nemi kandi chi do o da de shen ba che gu re ese go da de ge chen bo re ese da de su gu do ge shi gong ba o.
So, and a precious Katamba Lama Gumbawa is quoted. Then to eliminate the mental afflictions, then you must know their faults, their definitions, and their antidotes and the causes for their arising. So Gumbawa says, in order to eliminate mental afflictions, then we must first identify what mental afflictions is. And then we also have to identify why we have to abandon them. Why do we have to abandon mental afflictions? So then, by knowing the faults of mental afflictions, then that serves as the reason to abandon the mental afflictions. So how do we abandon them? Then we have to generate antidotes. Then what kinds of antidotes to be generated in order to abandon mental afflictions? Then this is something that we have to know. So, for example, if you want to abandon anger, if you want to abandon affliction, abandon attachment, then we must know the faults of it. Then what antidotes to be generated. So it's just like if we go to a company, then different departments, they perform different functions, right? They have different functions and they have different works. It's just like we go to school as well. So they have different works. Then we have to understand their functions, the reason to abandon them, etc.
Nemi shepa chine kinto takura dala sungure ese ndua dala sungure nemi mashina daku marese rwa nemi de mashiba tangwe nese rwa nemi de mashina tako dayimba karije ko nemu de chewe de koranga nemi ducha kandi jeme de mashiba ina tako dala ese da haku marwa de dala ese yungu mare tendi sunta tando de jeda chenju ne somba nanshin re sungota do de jeda chenju ne lunga de uma ngasu shisa yimba dayi kondu shisa yimba.
So if you do not understand their faults, you will not understand them to be enemies. So he says that if we do not know the faults of those mental afflictions, then we will not regard them as enemies. So therefore, you should contemplate them along the lines of the statements from Ornament for the Mahayana Sutras and entering the Bodhisattva way that we have just talked about.
내가 나지 내문나지 진이 해봐라. 간다. 조용해봐. 다 조용해봐. 전에 야부 송자래. 다 뭔가 군디로 저 야부 송자래. 그러와. 다 뭔가 군디 들어 간다. 맞아 자니 도다 내년에 실라서 봤다가 간다 신주 마치 다 맞아 줄라. 대 맞아 센신주 마치 그러와. 다 무슨 배제바 그러와. 그래서 배야버래. 다 무슨 상마다 간다. 뭐시 받제고 저 야부 딴 뉴그래서 그러와. 그래서 야부 따바이나. 대 자와다 내년 뭐 맞아서 간리임에 대pe 수수기 줄라pe 녀무지 제스와이나 녀무제들이스나 녀무도 가르렌도 슈치야도 가르렌도 병원도 가르쳐도 다도 소 힘받쳐 버려서와 그래서 다 컨트롤하고 다 따왕하다 따밍하는 배 수수기 따왕하다 따밍하는 컨트롤 제되나 다 따밍하는 지ren도 와 따왕하다 따밍하는 컨트롤에서 와 들이엔도 무슨 거지 와 답에 지단하고 지지위나 왔단 들이엔도 와서 수 심받쳐 버려 수 마히마이나 뜻라 카티자 신고 말해 나서 드라스와 내 마선 지딩비 드라이나 드라딩 내 마선 바 비들라 카티자네 다 간다 슈야요 말와 드라딩 내 마시바이나 뜻소소 도볼 슈야 있는가 여러와 소소 도볼 슈야 있는가 여래 뭐 근데 진짜 다 딜로거 간다와 자와다 녀무 받서 ngо시 받진 때 차당 가루 지라 지와이나 단데 선다 든데 ngö스 받지 구고래 든데 ngö스 우리 때 콜라파 카티다 녀무 자라 내하고 해서 그러와 내하고 해서
So then, in order to know the definitions of the mental afflictions, then you should also study the Abhidhamma text and the compendium of Abhidhamma, and at least the explanations of the 5 aggregates. So, in my mental factors, the Tuesday class, then we are going to study the root afflictions and also secondary afflictions as well. So, in which we are going to study in depth who are they, and so, like for example, if anger arises, then we identify what anger is, and we also talk about the view among the 10 mental afflictions, and 5 are views and 5 are non-views, right? Like for example, anger is one of the non-view afflictions, for example. So all these then we have to understand. We have to understand the nature of those afflictions, understand them well. Otherwise, we are unable to. We do not know how to apply, and do not know how what antidotes to generate. So it's just like if you want to shoot at something, then you must know what is the target, right? So if without knowing where or what is the target, then there is a danger that we might shoot at our friend.
야, 다들이 데레 샤위로와 당아서 레들라 티스 제바지다 요래. 레 티야들 단 진짜 제말 마 티야이 마 티스 제바지도와. 레드 티스야 야가서 티스 망보 로게 지랑서 티스 로그레 마도. 레들라 티스 야 노다 티스 요래. 망보 슈게 요래. 다들이 그 상전에 뜻받지 도와 티스 니스 따나 등아서 데라 상샤게 되고 들어와.
That's all. Yeah, so I will stop. I will not proceed to talking about the karma, because karma is quite an extensive topic. Then not only I should read the text, and you should read before the class as well. So this topic karma, then I will talk about it in next class. So do you have any questions before I end the class? Maybe 1 or 2 if you have. That's all. Yeah, so if you don't have any questions, then we'll stop here.
Can I ask one question, please?
Yeah.
From the previous class from Geshe-la, we had actually the definition of transitory collection and the definition of ignorance. So at the beginning of this class, Geshe-la said that Prasangika thinks that the ignorance is the same as the view of the transitory collection. Why would they think that? Based on the definitions that we had in the last class? Can Geshe-la please elaborate? Thank you.
So, 디 그래서 dunangama 디 ngaso 이생이 데 시차네 애니 가르치네 땡큐와기 디 마리바당 지다디 직바데 되기요나 딜라테네 데 친이 데 dunangama 데 라송아 지 딜라테네
지난 마리바지 셔와 당가서 탄주와게 지난 가서 다 내랑데 니 제일 마셔야 인지다게 친이도 가리미 제일 쉬야 인슬라이 봐
가서 지당 디 dunangama 있는 아주 마리바 데 지당이 돈에로
지난 마리바도 마셔와 지난 마리바서 가서 고대야치다 마리바세와다 마셰바다 만통와다 마사와세와 지난 가서 다 고대바 다 지난 마리바도 여당들라 다 디세 전탑선 여당 만라 용어로와
마리바디
마리바 어딘 여당데 만라 디세 용어로 마리바세와들 가서 제당 망보시여래 에 미디고네 제당 다치지고네 제당 님비고네 제당 다도 사마 참아 시사지 쇼구나 예르마도 한사 용고 말이 카시 당보 가서 마리바 제 장바데 지당 마리바세와다 간비지레 뇌스우스나 당가서 댐 만통아 댐 마리바 지네 간다 마셰바 마사와 덴디지랑가서 드라히다 부지마 뇌스는라야체 당보 뇌스 송그로와 내 덴디지네 다 마리바라 말레오데 데 제제라 다 간다 랑기엘라 신지로도 신니게 마리바 랑기엘라 몬드게 마링가 마리바 다 마체바 다 렌데라 모베 마리바 대 권한이라 모베 마리바서 다 마리바게 페 로당다 마보레 디스마 로아 담보 가서 동시 제이찬에 가지 마리바를 다시르마 뇌송아치도 쇼바레스 데 제젤 말레오데 다 마리바 대당들라 전타도 소소소야 대다 만다 올레오로와 대다레오 만다 올레고 다 단다데 가서 고단 차치 담보 마리바서 카투바 다시데 유데 마리바 만통바 마셰바 댐마사 든디지 파 담보 고단 차바지 데 마자 든디지 요바이나 데 젤 마리바데 대당다 간지 간리도 데 디즈마 시사마 안도야레스 오 든디지
so any the 가리지니 디 땡큐에 마리바당 지다디 지도 되기요나스 가리지네사 김제
나서 이 마리지다 세와 그런 마리바랑 단조가 가서 마리바사 다트 번가 단지 코로나 바 마리바이세 되는 단지 코로나 다트바 단지라 마리바이 되게 다 전타도 마리바사 내가 만다와 뒤지 이거래 내가 만다와 이거래 지다 코로나 단지긴 지다 코로나 바 다트바 단지 파 이거래 뭐 단지라 지다 이거 말이세 고라 단조하게 다 단지라 마리바 인게 세와요래 다도 소등 가서 시사티 제르마 이놈아들 항상 저한테 가도 거다 쳐두고 말아
그래서 지다데 데 당진데 이메 캐러 당진마데 지다데 이메 마 캐러
지다라 당진 인고세고 다 단조하고 엄마 단조 당한테 카드가 데려와 원지다라 당진 인고래서 다 당진은 지다 인고요 말이야 야 마리바 인고 받던데요 다도 그 다들 할려지나 마도 니바 타두자데 간다 계속 단조와 송자 그마 제르마 야 강도도 제바지 또 상당거래 나도 다시 공도 시바도 같이 전타 비케차요 말에 전타 마원데 술 케차요 말에 그래서 그라 마리바세와데 다시 마셔데 만통아 마리바 엠마사와세 다 든지 카투 다시나 보지 든지 고그레세 담보 든지 셰마이나 때젤 전타 소소고 녀스데 때 가게 갈래 바 제르제르 든 로초로 와
Yeah, so the ignorance that we talked last week, then is more like the etymological explanations of ignorance. So then we talk about ignorance being ignorance is something that which do not understand its object, do not see its object, or do not do not see, do not have a clear image of the object. So this is more like the etymological explanations of it. So in a general context. So then if we were to, so that is the general explanations of ignorance. Then if we dig further, then different tenant systems, they assert ignorance in a different ways. So some so they assert ignorance in different ways. Even how ignorance arise, also they assert their way of arising differently as well. So last week we do not talk about the assertions of the different tenor systems on ignorance. So today we talk about ignorance being the same with the view of transitory collections and the self-grasping being the same or ignorance being the same. So this is according to Prasangika Madhyamika. So and again, if we were to dig further, so then we have to study tenet systems. So like some as a thing, Prasangika Madhyamika, they assert view of the transitory collections as the self-grasping is necessarily the self-grasping. However, self-grasping is not necessarily the view of the transitory collections. So to understand this, then we have to study tenet systems in detail or in depth. So ignorance, there are many types of ignorance as well. So ignorance that ignorance that is confused with the object, ignorance that mistakes the object, and ignorance that mistake karma, in fact, the emptiness and the suchness or emptiness, etc. So there are many types of ignorance as well. So last week we only talk about ignorance in general.
마리바텔라 제라마와이나 코랑기 제라마와 나노 데바 뚜브지 데바 망보 여러와 제라마 코노스 난세라야 마리반 데랑 만다와요 너 데바이나 다가요 코노스 너 데바 나노야 만다와 데랑요 세상바이나 다가요 다 요와스다 나서 단다베 지시도 마리바다 마치 다시지 든지 마시 든지 뇌스나 다 창소 망보 러바이나 세나로 인주사다 지에베 소속에 아 인주마토바 참아베 토르상상 땡땡이 뜻 참아다 쉬고요 말이 나서베 다 말이 받지랑 나서 된다 지차례 파이 뇌스바지 제 때문에 마누리 나서 탄주하게 되다가 가르젠도 드마치쇼 든지 제 땡이 디트고요 다 지당 나서 준타마 창상은 뇌스티 시구나 다 뜻서 베 제바지 시구나마도 고단처가 연구 말이 그러와 제다마 나노란 되다라 요래 다 노데바 신자바 사마테가리 또 나노란 되다 만다와 연구야 롱구 제나바 리피 제나바 세와 또 저건 되다 만다와 연구야.
Yeah, so regarding ignorance, even Vaibhashikas, there are many sub-schools as well. There are 18 sub-schools, and even those sub-schools, they assert ignorance differently. So same as the Sautrantika as well. So Sautrantika also, they are followers of scriptures and followers of reasoning as well. They also assert differently. So at this stage, we are more like understand ignorance from the etymological aspect, and we also understand since we. Then we also talk about the assertions of Prasangika and Madhyamika. So I only talk about Prasangika Madhyamika assertions on it and ignorance in general. So at this stage, I do not go in depth. Otherwise, then we could hardly understand them.
대결에 가서 노조 가서 제제도 등다서 티우냐 등다서 소소군데나 디슬레우로와 그래서 디슬레우로와 다 네카툴라 든디 마모지 러자디 다 미카시페 응고 벤로기 내가 열스코 사마 카이 가리 사산다 지금 소나메고 차로로와.
Yeah, so as we go along, then we cover more topics. Then we will study tenets. So is one of the topics in basic programs. So then in that subject, then we are going to study tenets or tenets in depth. So if I were to talk in depth now, then it could for some people, then they might find it difficult to understand. Then even there is a danger that they can understand nothing about ignorance.
Thank you. That didn't tell you.
That's all. So yeah, thank you, and stop here.
사실 건너서 유나 구체적인 제번에 쇼군의 제보다 란자나 간조라 배 하장 거들 하바지 저질러마 서바는 것이 또 간다 투 공식 강요가 개면 힘준도 받아 거의 상황스란 가진지 처모자야 마게 봐. 투 공식 강요가 개면 힘준도 봐 쇼스나 든디기 봐. 뭐하면 줘야지 들어와. 예, 먼저 게 단답에 인종아시 네발라서 받들이 마모 진우도와 오 딘디 니야레 다 사용레 다 마레 만투레 딘디 니야 미힐라서 받들아 판제반 유도파 도약 느리치레 공화체지
Yeah, so we conclude with dedication. We dedicate the roots of virtue accumulated, especially through these Dhamma discussions. May it be the complete course for in general, Buddha Dhamma to we dedicate these roots of virtue for the Buddha teachings, and then for all sentient beings as well. And we also dedicate these roots of virtue to upholders of Buddha's teachings, represented by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and also our beloved and very kind Guru, Kyabje Lama Zopa Rinpoche. So may they live eons long, excellent health, and may their holy wishes be accomplished instantly without any obstacles. And we also dedicate these roots of virtue for the world peace, and may happiness prevail the world. May a natural disaster caused by four elements, a pandemic, earthquake, flood, war, conflicts, famine, etc., will be pacified immediately.
Ake jene sabi gewan de tendan doa tendan kende ba kibla jiben lo tang imbe ni bo rin do se je jo chang tu sun jo rin bo de ma je ba na chi je bi che ba nyam ba ne wu ne gong dong pe wa jo jang be pa ye che dan chen ba da tong do san be de de gen de e da gen je je zo da ye wan de da tang je ra do ngo tu ni ta wa rin bo je ma che che ba nyam ba wu ne gong dong pe wa jo rin ni ta wa rin bo 오늘 공도 배워 두জন 청년장 대결에 진정도 나서 되제된도 자네 소 우리 인间성공주로 하나 공주들 소와 내도 연례도 요 인지대 강대 편대 말로가 강례주의 상대 의견을 가진 점에 땡지 장도 소와 내도 연례도 요 여러의 고의 신간도天道도 많이 나중에 신기해 봐도 되지. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Geshe-la. Thank you, everyone.
Sheila, got me an
Thank you,
announcement.
everyone.
Tomorrow, please join us for our first